to talk for a very short time about what Agility has done themselves within their company to assist in these kinds of situations. As some of you know, you've probably seen my bio. I have 25 years with the Department of Defense, with the bulk of that time spent doing humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So, as many of you have, you know, we can trade war stories about how everything went wrong all at one time, always. No matter what you planned for, there was always something difficult that you had to deal with, you know, on the next day or that afternoon. Again, just briefly about Agility, and I'm very certain that a lot of your organizations mirror this somewhat. We have over 450 offices in 100 countries, 22,000 employees, over 6,000 owned vehicles and transportation ability, and over 8 million square feet of controlled warehousing. And what this means is we have people in 100 countries. So therefore, when a disaster strikes, some kind of emergency strikes, we have a lot of people already in place. We have a lot of in-house capability of people who are already there. And as you know, disasters have a way of really tugging at people's hearts, and everyone wants to respond. Everybody wants to do something. What made sense for Agility is that we would try to respond providing our core competencies, basic logistic type things. International disasters obviously was a great fit. You know, everyone knows in disasters, the infrastructure is destroyed, the congested airports, limited warehousing, you know, all the things my colleagues have talked about and all the things that everyone in this room are probably very familiar with. We have in place, as many of you do, you know, the structural network, personnel, assets, and the already in place part helps with providing the appropriate response. Everyone has a good idea of what needs to happen, and as we talked about, the people on the ground who are the decision makers, whether it's a DART team or the UN or an NGO, are really in the best position to decide what are the urgent needs. You know, there's normally lots of urgent needs, but you really need to break it down to the first 2, 3, 4. As we talked about, you know, in Katrina, people were dying of thirst. That was something that could have been changed if the communication had been different. And with our global reach, we have the ability to mobilize people very quickly, have the expertise there. We also have funding available in a very short amount of time. What Agility has done is we have, over the years, we've had a dedicated corporate social responsibility directorate, which does a number of things. But one of the things that is under that directorate is we've developed depot emergency teams, warehouse emergency teams, airport emergency teams, transport emergency teams. These teams can be deployed at any time. They've been trained to do this kind of stuff, depending upon what area in the world the disaster is, whether it's a man-made disaster, person-made disaster, or natural disaster. These teams are available to be deployed and to, you know, work with whoever's on the ground, who is the decision maker, and again, what the appropriate response is. We've had some great successes. I'd like to talk to you just a couple minutes. We transported biscuits, food items, rice to feed 40,000 people displaced by the floods in Jakarta. We did that in coordination with the World Food Program, but Agility provided that transportation, and they provided the teams there to do the distribution. We feel very strongly about places where we have a presence. We want to do the right thing from a social standpoint. We want to do the right thing for the community, so we're seen as an active part of the community. In the Philippines, we partnered with the Department of Social Welfare and delivered 150 tons of blankets and food by the victims of the typhoon. And one of my favorites is in India, we did provide training for humanitarian logisticians from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan with the Red R. And as we all know, training, these people are now trained, they're now certified. In the event that they're needed, they have this certification. And they can also, and we want these people, of course, to stay with Agility forever, but when they move on, they still have this certification, they still have this ability, and they can take it with them, and it can be something that could be very helpful in the future. How we got our employees involved, as you all know, I mentioned a few minutes ago, disasters always strike a chord. Employees always want to help. When it's a country they feel associated with, it's even a stronger desire to help. We have over 130 countries represented on our payroll. That's a lot of countries represented. So even with a disaster happening in a country over here, we may have employees at Agility that feel some kind of association with that country, and they have the ability within Agility to respond in a number of ways. We not only have the emergency teams, we also have a couple of different programs where, and again, this is in our corporate social responsibility, we have a couple of different programs where an employee who has an idea can write in, we provide grants, can write in, say, this is the situation, this is what I think we need to do to, alleviate the situation, this is how we can help, and this is probably what it may cost. I just did this. I was in Khartoum the last couple of weeks, went to an orphanage there. Agility has an office in Khartoum, so we are part of the community. There's an orphanage there. We spent a day at the orphanage assessing what they needed, talking to them, finding out what they needed. I wrote an email that afternoon to the people who run the corporate office and said, this is what we need to do in this orphanage, and I got the approval for $5,000. So it works. It really works. And we find that when the corporate structure provides the money, the employees are very happy to provide their time, to provide volunteers, to get their other family involved. And I sat down with the Agility employees in our Khartoum office and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get you this money. Probably 5 or 6 men in the office at that moment called their wives, called their sisters, called their mothers. The women are now going to be doing volunteer work at the orphanage. They're going to be taking care of the orphans. We're providing a somewhat significant amount of financial aid. And it just, if you don't ask anyone for too much, people can give lots. So that's how we try to keep our employees engaged, and it has worked out so that everybody wins. Obviously, the recipients, the people in the disaster or in the humanitarian need area, end up winning, obviously. The company looks great. The people in the country who are part of Agility are, they're feeling very positive about what they're doing. They're feeling very positive about working for Agility. So there really isn't, I don't see any downsides. So in closing, again, it's something that I found very interesting about Agility, and I've been learning. I am in the international development part of Agility. I'm not with the corporate social responsibility office. But because of my background, I found it very, very interesting, and I think it's been very innovative how they have done this to include their employees and to be part of communities around the globe. And I think that's important to all of us. So I thought you might find that interesting. If you have further questions, I'd love to talk to you about that. If other companies have those kinds of programs, I'd be equally as interested in hearing about that. And I think that's it, and we welcome your questions.